City Council of the City of Poplar, Bluff, Missouri, to be held on Tuesday, September 3rd, 2019, at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers at 301 South 5th Street. Will now come to order. We will have invocation by Pastor Sean Usery of Fellowship of New Hope Church.
Let us pray together. Heavenly Father, God, we just ask you into this place tonight, God. We just thank you for every person that's in this room, for the decisions that are made regarding our town and just the governing factors. And God, I just pray that you bless every person here. Bless our town, God. We just ask, Spirit, for you to come into this room and guide every decision that's made. And Father, I just pray for peace and joy over everything that transpires today. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Mrs. Young.
Councilwoman Parson. Here. Councilman DeGaris.
Here.
Councilwoman Horton.
Here.
Councilman Cornman.
Here.
Councilman Black.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to the City Council meeting tonight. Thank you all for attending. Item 5, disclosure of interest. Any member of the City Council may disclose any possible conflict of interest dealing with either any item on the printed agenda or with any matter discussed at a previous meeting. Hearing none. Item 6, citizens' input. Each person in the audience may take this opportunity to address the City Council on any matter which is not on the printed agenda. I believe first we have Mr. Spencer Jones. Please state your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Spencer Jones, address 903 Garfield, North Garfield. Thank you, Your Honor, for allowing me to speak today. One of the things that all of us talked about, I'd like to think all of us talked about going back to February, that each month there will be a short report from us and from you, making sure that we're just not talking, that all of us are busy making things happen. Because if that's happened, then we can get things done. But if one group are working and another group are not working, then it's difficult to accomplish any goal or get anything done. Since I was here last in August, since I spoke last, I talked to a Chicago policeman. Normally they have a policy that a guy can work 25 years, he can retire, then he can go on to any other job he wants to go on to. And I've told him about this town and stuff like that. I'll see him next week to further, he was excited about the idea, so to further talk about that. I met personally this morning, had breakfast with Jeff Shaw, who's the state representative, told him about, specifically about my prayer, my goal is Highway 60 up here at the river, a business 6 that run down to 67, that we could have that. It is common all across America. It's nothing new. You'll have a name and a number. In other words, you got 60 and Dr. King Street. It's a common thing because by and large, human beings don't like change. It's just something about it. Change is good, but we don't like change and we fight change. And so that will keep a lot of fighting from going on regarding that. I have a meeting scheduled with Hardy Billinger in October to talk to him further about these matters. I have a meeting scheduled with Senate Libya in December. And also I keep the Afro-American community informed of what we're saying, what we're doing, because we just want to make sure all of us are clear, all of us are working hard, and we're not taking one another lightly. That's very critical. So I don't know who would give a report from you guys of what might have happened since we were here last.
I did talk to the gentleman. You'd left me a message to call a gentleman, I think from Chicago, that was interested in the police position.
Right.
I did talk to him. I'm assuming it's the same gentleman, but he told me he was more interested in a chief's position and not a patrolman's position. So,
Okay.
but I did tell him. I said if he knew of anybody that was interested, that
Okay.
we had some openings. So.
Okay. Okay. Any other report?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Well, again, I just want to encourage and motivate all of us to stay busy and be intentional. We get, and remember, all we got to do is follow a pattern. When you look at Alabama, why they got a good football team, they're intentional. Why LSU have a good football, they're intentional. If we're intentional, we get it done. If we're not, then we end up at the end of the line, we have not accomplished anything. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We have Mr. David Johnson.
David Johnson. I'm representing at 1426 Cypher, and I'm representing the Butler County Fair. And the fair is at the end of this month, and we're going to have some fireworks. So I came down to ask permission from the council to let us fire fireworks off on the 28th, the end of the fair. I've already talked to Chief Stucker with the fire department. We've got the logistics worked out on it. All I need is the permission from the council to have the fireworks.
We just need a verbal approval from the council to allow them to shoot the fireworks in town.
Okay, not a vote, just, okay. I'm okay with it.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
That's all I needed. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. All approved.
We just need a motion to approve.
Right.
Verbal vote.
Have a motion and a second.
Motion for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next, we have Mrs. Jerica Fox.
Jerica Fox, 501 Vine Street. Mayor, members of the council, I'm here tonight in regards to the annual Iron Horse Festival. This year it's our 10th annual and the second annual Veteran Fall Festival with the John J. Pershing VA Medical Center. So we come before you every year to request the sale of alcohol. Last year we did it on our own as downtown Poplar Bluff. This year we're handing the torch back over. So this year the two vendors that will be serving will be Francisco Escovel with the Taco food truck and Lisa and Larry Hafford with Haffy's Sports Bar and Grill. So those will be the two that will be serving this year, each of which will have a liquor license with the state and the city, as well as insurance coverage.
So we need a motion.
Motion to approve the request.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And before I step away, I just kind of want to give an overview while I'm here of the festival. This year, being our 10th annual, we're adding back our river race on Black River and our grape stomp at noon on the Main Street stage. So those are two things that we used to have several years ago, so we're bringing those two back. And the Wake Foundation has jumped on board with us this year because of the VA Medical Center, and so we're getting up-and-coming artist, country music singer Tiara. So this year should be one of our biggest years yet. So it'll be Saturday, September 28th, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and it's free admission to the festival grounds. It's just small admission fees to the different events going on that day. So thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Item 7, the workshop items for discussion. Item A, the City Council will discuss a presentation from Navigate Building Solutions by Mr. Todd Sweeney regarding the status of the City Hall, Police Station, and Municipal Court Building Project. Mr. Sweeney.
Hey, Steve, would you flip that light off?
For those of you in the back, you may want to move to the other side.
Yeah, it was.
We had the lights on earlier.
Yeah, that's bright.
All right, good evening. My name is Todd Sweeney, Navigate Building Solutions. Thank you very much, Mayor and City Council, for allowing me to come in and report on a lot of activity that's been taking place over the last 3 or 4 months pertaining to your facility plan and the discussion on the facilities that could be built for the benefit of your community at your direction.
I can't hear you. Might want to speak to the mic a little better.
Thank you, Ron. We have prepared an agenda this evening to go through our update. The agenda includes reviewing the planning objective tonight's desired outcome. We're going to talk about the facility sizes of the 3 facilities that are currently under consideration, which include the City Hall, courts, and the police facility, law enforcement facility. We're going to review possible facility locations, facility costs, funding sources, and then ultimately there's an objective this evening that's defined on the next page, which is tonight's desired outcome, which is to select the facility implementation option to give both the city manager and Navigate the authorization to proceed with an option or not to do anything. And that's what we're looking for tonight. To remind everybody, again, the planning objective, which is the first 2 bullets, was to define the city's future facility size, locations, costs, and funding, and for us to come with you with tangible and objective implementation plans that you can consider, which we're prepared to do as we move forward. First thing we were asked to do is define facility size. There's been a lot of presentations done to you over the last 4 or 5 years trying to define what the facility needed to be, the size of the facilities. Again, we're speaking specifically about law enforcement and then a city hall / courts facility. The process we undertook to do that was streamlined for the purpose of hitting this objective, then the others associated with it, such as location and cost. So what we did is step number 1, we reviewed your current department and staffing. We find that staffing alone can be a good indicator of the facility size requirements, given the fact that in Missouri there's been a remarkable number of city halls, police stations, and court facilities built, all driven by the size requirements for those facilities. So we've seen patterns, and we're able to benchmark that for you. We're considering future growth. We ask key questions on how both police, courts, and city hall operate. We identified similar facilities, again, going back to that benchmark data, and then determined recommended square footages. These square footages, if authorized to proceed with an option this evening, would be vetted then by an architectural team that would actually lay out floor plans and so forth. We do feel very comfortable with the square footages you'll see in the next few slides are accurate, and then any facility that you build today will meet the needs of your staff, given that basic parameter of square footages that will be represented here. Oops, somehow jumped a few backwards. Again, we started with the staffing of the police station. We looked across the board at all the facilities that have been built. There's been over a dozen in Missouri, and found one in particular, Creve Coeur, that has a very similar staffing plan. We reviewed this with your police chief. We discussed what was occurring with their operations, and then said, what kind of facility do they currently operate in? Well, they currently operate in a facility that's undersized because as of last Thursday, they just moved into a brand new facility. It's in Creve Coeur, Missouri. We looked at that facility. You can see the floor plans. Now, obviously, this is a 2-story structure, and you won't see that as presented as the best case solution for you tonight as far as 2 stories. But what we looked at was all the components that are in it. We looked at the puzzle pieces, and we went back to your chief and said, man, does this really make sense with how you're operating, and would this be indicative of the kind of things you'd want in your new police station? What do I mean by that? I mean cells, So CALIA and different certifications were required. You have a separate juvenile cell, separate female cell, a couple other holding cells. It has to do with muster rooms, has to do with weight rooms and physical fitness and training and evidence storage. So we felt very comfortable that the Creve Coeur model in today's standard, and I can tell you we were involved with Creve Coeur and they pushed back considerably from where they started. So I felt that that community had done what you would expect a community to do, which is right-size their facility. So we started with the Creve Coeur building. It was 25,000 square feet. We acknowledged that that building was missing a component that you would want in your facility, which is relocating the dispatch that currently is at the college back into the police station. So we went out to the dispatch center at the college, looked over their square foot program, what was needed, what would be needed, and added an additional 2,000 square feet. I firmly believe, and we can recommend, 27,000 square foot is the right size for this facility going forward, and it's a good benchmark to allow you then to engage the discussion of cost and location, which was the other primary objectives of this report. We did the exact same thing with City Hall and courts. Found two facilities. One will receive bids. They received bids last Friday, was the City of Union. Another one was the City of Baldwin, which was completed a year and a half ago. Both of which, as you can walk through the table from left to right, you'll see admin, finance, collector, clerk, support, all the way to total staffing, have remarkably similar staffing requirements, okay? And they're functioning similar to how you will function. And I've done in the last 7 years, we're on our 8th City Hall, not 7 years, in the last 3 years alone, we've completed 8 City Halls. I can tell you the components start to fit similarly, a boardroom. Why you're at 15 total staff, if you see in the middle, versus the 17 and 18, and yet we're suggesting a little bit larger square footage, is because of how you're going to operate your courtroom. Your judges requested the ability to do some queuing in a little bit larger courtroom than what we're normally seeing. This does contemplate that the Board of Aldermen, council members, and the courtroom will be in the same room, okay? Every city hall we've built, though there's been multiple discussions on separating those, it's never panned out financially to do two separate rooms because of the infrequent use, and the size and the requirements of those rooms are remarkably similar. So everybody's building them together. So for tonight's discussion, just to right size it, we assume that they would be in the same physical space, okay, a boardroom and the courtroom. But it is a little bit larger, and that's why you're seeing a 12,000 square foot number versus the 11 or the 10, even though you have a slightly smaller staffing requirement. Okay, so we felt really good. 12,000. Can you do it? The one on the right-hand side is City of Union. The one on the left-hand side is Baldwin. They're actually replications. Baldwin's been built again. City of Union just received bids. So I feel very comfortable when later we talk about numbers, very confident about what's showing up in the marketplace for those type of facilities. And if you look at the City of Union facility, that's a very inexpensive facility. Okay, when you look at that facade, you're looking at something similar to what they did in Cape Girardeau and Jackson and Sykeston. Okay, it's not remarkable. I will tell you, the Baldwin was. I mean, it was a little bit more high-end. It's got, you could just tell by looking at it, right? So you'll see us talk about cost models, and I just wanted to reflect on this a little bit before we jump into those. In summary, we believe that you have the right size, the law enforcement facility for 27,000 square feet, and a City Hall courts for 12. The next thing we generally have to try to do is identify if there is a need, and I think the square foot alone, as communicated, was enough of a story to define that. That you have an 8,000 square foot facility you're currently operating in. I meant to put in here, and I apologize, there was a request to actually include the current facilities you're in or used to operate at. In downtown, the law enforcement facility was actually larger than 27,000 square feet. You were running around 35. Okay, and your City Hall courts, I think, actually was a little bit larger too downtown. And there was reasons for that, and I apologize to some of the staff members behind that asked for that information to be up here. The reason why we're right-sizing it to 27, there's a lot of reasons. The facility downtown was an old medical, and it was built on top of itself multiple times. There's multiple additions. You lost a lot of efficiency in that facility. Okay. The second thing is you're operating more efficiently today than you were back then. So quite frankly, that square footage of 27 is less than what you were operating at back when you were downtown, and obviously substantially more than what you're currently operating at the 8,000, okay, as well as City Hall. So the conclusion is City Hall, Poplar, Bluff are functioning facilities currently considerably undersized and lacking the basic spaces that are critical for efficient operations. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do here, is define facilities that give better quality of life to the community you serve. And as elected officials, we're trying to present some tangible information so that you may choose to do that through new facilities should you actually authorize us to proceed. Move to the next one, where. So there was a long discussion on where. It's been a discussion that's been studied within your community for a very long time. I'm not going to go back to the old studies. What I'm going to focus on is 3 sites that were given to me as tangible sites going forward. They included a site at Shelby Road, as identified by the blue star on the left-hand side in the middle of the page. It's near PP and Shelby Road. The second one was a site near the existing police station. We called it the 11th Street site. And the third was a downtown site, which is essentially the property you own now that used to house City Hall and courts and police. When we started looking at this, we said there's 3 things right off the bat that can either be go or no-goes on all 3 sites. They include size, layout and accessibility, and cost. So the first thing we want to do is we wanted to look at parcel size, and we wanted to apply that to all 3 sites. Are all 3 sites big enough to do what we want? Okay. When we do that, we take those square foot assumptions. That's why we need to start with a basic premise on the right size square foot. Because when you take that square foot and you add in parking and security and gross up and entry drives and so forth, you find out that for a law enforcement facility, the right size for the site is about 2 acres. Okay, so if you were going to start from scratch, which we do a lot, we have a lot of communities say, okay, hey, we're just going to start, we don't know what site, we want you to go buy one. First thing we do is this, the exact same process. Okay, because if you hadn't identified those 3, you need to know how big of a site you need. And then you go look for them. In our case, we had 3 we already had identified, so we're beta testing them to make sure they make sense. The second thing was the City Hall Courts facility. You can see that's about 1.25 acres. If you do them combined, the entryways, some of the drive-throughs and so forth can be actually reduced on the site together, if it's built together. So you're really looking at together approximately 3 acres. You could get down to 2.5 if you do multi-story. I could tell you there's a lot of debate. If I was a developer, I'd stand in front of you and tell you to do 2 stories all day long with an office building. Okay, it's a little bit different when you get into law enforcement facilities and police because of the core function that exists in the security requirements. I sometimes say when you're looking at a 12,000 square foot building, you're looking at 6,000 to 6,000. So if 1,000 of that's core space, an elevator, stairs, a lobby, right, and you're that's almost 20% of the floor print that isn't used for anything except for elevator, stair, and lobby. So it's difficult to make a smaller footprint 2-story and economical, and then when you compound the security and the flow and function that's typically that typically wants to be in your type of facility, we're finding most public entities will pay a little premium for 2-story, which may not exist if you were a private entity doing a development spec office building. Okay? So we don't recommend 2-story, but it certainly can be done all day long. Quite frankly, that's what you were operating in when you were downtown. So, and that's what we did, as I showed you before, for Creve Coeur Police, because they had a site that said it had to be 2-story. So there's certainly a means and methods to that. So we looked at the Shelby Road site. We said, wow, well, we're looking at some property that exists off of Shelby Road. There appears to be about 58 acres in that area that might be available. We said, well, if we're looking at 3 acres of it, there appears to be plenty of site if it can be purchased out in that area. And it indicates, preliminary indications indicated to us that it was purchasable, okay, that it could be purchased. We went to the 11th Street site, and with the topography and the fallback into the backside of the trailer park that currently exists, we really struggled with making this work tangibly, just the size and the logistics with the 1.3 acres. And then lastly, your downtown site, it worked before, it will work again. You had 2-story structures on there before. We'd probably recommend 2-story, though it may not be necessary, but because now you've added in the auto shop and you've added in there might be some ways to do that, but certainly it can work. Okay, so now we're down to 2 sites, Shelby Road and downtown. The next thing we did is we said, okay, let's look at layout and accessibility and cost. Let's do it for one site, because I can hit all 3 of those topics and easier just hitting one side at a time. So we looked at Shelby Road, and at one time, we were working parallel paths. At one time, we looked at 4.5 acres in that area. We said, if we can get that piece of ground, and it appears that there's some preliminary discussions to suggest that we can, that would need to be shored up and would be an authorization for us to do so if you deem this an appropriate site for your facilities. It's zoned right. It's a small portion of the overall available acreage, and it's be suggested that an ideal spot within that 58 acres would be in this location. The main reason why, well, we wanted to make sure the police, for accessibility, want two ways onto major roadways. You got PP and you got Shelby Road. There was some discussion of whether or not there was actually ground that could be purchased between, somewhere on between PP and Shelby. And so we actually went out and did a site survey of just that 4.5 acres, and we learned that the access roads are actually easements back to the current tenants, the dentist, and so forth, that you would actually own those the access roads to PP. So that started saying, wow, accessibility, this particular site looks really good as far as layout and accessibility. Okay. We said it's also relatively flat. Somebody's graded off the hillside. There is a picture on this next that kind of gives you... Well, there's the site there on the right-hand side. You can see the three pictures. So just to make sure everybody's orientated correctly. You've probably driven by it multiple times, so you know where we're at. So I'm going to go back to here. Also, we look to make sure, sometimes we had a property, 55 acres in O'Fallon 2 years ago that had a abandoned Phillips gas line on it, okay? So we want to make sure there's no ahas, because that would be an aha. So we'd have to pay a lot of money to remediate. We don't have any of those. And then also we said, are there utilities within reach? Sometimes we get to pretty remote sites when we're looking for cities. Maybe it's whatever it might be. It might be a jail site. It's remote, and though most utility companies want their services on a site, if you're going too far, you can get into a problem, where you got to pay a lot of money to get a gas line out there, electric service out there. That wasn't the case here, so we were excited about that. But I did want you to know that we've done the due diligence so that when you explore this as an option to agree on or not agree on, you know that we've done that vetting. I'd hate to go through the only thing we don't have is a contract on the land. That's the only thing that could trip this up. But certainly that would be a next step if you choose to go here. We then said, man, there's lots of different ways we could lay this out. If you do City Hall and police here, if you only do police here, there's lots of opportunities. You can see how the roadways would work and how we can do, most of the police stations want secured parking in the back, and there's a whole lot of discussion that will go into a site plan, which would be a next step as well. This just shows you, from a bird's point of view, what's the massing on the site. I can tell you that blue and red and yellow box, once we get an architect on board, you'll never see that again, okay? Because they'll do their own. They'll do an architectural layout that will be very more descriptive than that. It's only for the intent of showing you how it could potentially fit on the site, okay? I will state, law enforcement viewed this as, because it was asked during the discussion, we do want to get law enforcement's impression of the sites, and though they were very open about all the dialogues, they said this, in their opinion, would be the most accessible for response times, coverage, visibility, and their ability to react to any major event that could happen at the schools, and so forth. And again, we can certainly have those dialogues on that. Now, there's a cost. There's a land cost associated with this. Land cost to be determined. Okay. Potential acreage to be purchased 3 to 58 acres, obviously. We certainly don't need 58 acres, but if that were to be part of the deal, that would certainly could be a positive for the city. So what now we're looking for, is there any major site costs? And I can tell you, usually what we find here is insuitable soils have been dumped on the site. And at first I was talking to your staff, I thought that was a dump site, not a cut site. So I was like, oh, this could be 10 feet of unsuitable soil. We have that actually in Columbia right now on another project we're dealing with. And that's not the case here. It's a really good site. It doesn't have any non-typical site costs that you would see or could see on this. For Olivet, we had a situation where it dumped, and we're going to have to put $500,000 worth of new fill into the site. That's not the case here. Okay, so those are the kind of things we're looking at. We then jumped into layout and accessibility of the downtown site. To remind everybody of what we're talking about, we're talking about the old City Hall and police station, the 2-story parking garage, and the auto body, the Tire Express shop. I meant to change the name on that. Boy, I had a couple of notes that for some reason I got my head ahead of myself, but that was to be the Express Tire shop, to make sure everybody knows what we're referring to. Again, we really do believe that there's a lot of opportunity here if you do with the 2.6 acres. City Hall and required parking could be accommodated on either lot. You can move them around. In fact, we did some diagrams that kind of show you there's lots of ways to lay out a City Hall and police station or City Hall only on that site. There really didn't seem to be a huge detriment. There was also discussion if you don't use all the site, which you can see some of the green up there is just an idea of what could you do. There was a lot of discussion of could you have joint parking facilities with other entities within the community? Could you have parks? Could you do landscaping? Could you do, hardscapes with the fountain? I mean, there's all kinds of ideas. It's not our job to define that because it wasn't the task or the community investment we were asked to define, but they all exist. This was a quick study of the downtown. There was a discussion on whether or not we could reuse any of the existing facilities. We did a pretty extensive study, including commissioning and asbestos environmental resource. Our recommendation is absolutely not. The reuse of the existing facilities is not a good idea. Primary reason, more than anything else, it will be the trump card, will be the essential facility code requirements that are required now that are part of IBC code that didn't exist back when this facility was originally in operation. What that means is that facility will not meet the code requirements and will require such extensive upgrades that the return on investment simply isn't there. Downtown site costs, there has been a lot of discussion. Obviously, you own the ground. That's a positive. That's awesome. Alternative land value, there could be all kinds of alternative land value. We didn't put a price tag to that because it's speculative and that's not the kind of data we wanted to throw in here other than acknowledge the conversation took place. I will say that the site cost premiums would be the demolition of the old building. And the good news is you've heard all kinds of numbers, from 400 to $1 million. We went out and actually did like I said, the abatement cost estimate. We got demolition cost estimates, and you're looking at about $760,000. So it's a bit less than what we were originally anticipating, or not we, had been told you in the past you could expect. Okay? So, quite frankly, if you're looking at just site, just objective data, the size is good, the accessibility and layout is good for both sites. A little bit more challenging with the accessibility and layout for the downtown as it relates to the police, but you guys know those concerns. The site-specific premium cost, you have obviously the demolition, and then you got the land acquisition cost that would be associated with the Shelby Road. So, determining facility costs. So if I'm going to suggest that you pick an option, and we're going to build options you'll see in a moment that are associated with putting both buildings downtown, both buildings at Shelby, or splitting them, we got to start defining some costs. Because why would I ask you that question unless you know for sure if there's a cost difference? I can tell you, just looking at the site cost premiums, there's not a lot of difference between them. There really isn't. And you'll see that as we model. But what we have to do is give you the ability to make a decision going forward. So what we did is, again, we used benchmark data. We just bid union. Every one of these projects on the left-hand side are city hall or police facilities, similar to the ones that you would build. Some differences. Case studies are listed on the left-hand side. The project description is in the next column. The year it was bid. And bid is important. That's the year it was bid, which means it was actually built and occupied. It was actually occupied at least a year after in every one of these cases. So Baldwin was occupied in 2018. Winsville was 2017. Union will be next year. Rock Hill was 17. Olivet was 17. And Creve Coeur, actually that should be 19. It was bid in 17, but they're occupying it now. So the point to that is these are very relevant, they're very current, and they're not dated. That's important too, because as you know, our economy's changed dramatically. We can use case studies from 5, 10, 15 years ago, but trying to figure out what they really meant, what was really involved with it, was it right after the crash in 8, so was it bid in 9 and 10? Was somebody hungry or trying to, who knows? This is relevant, it's current, and I believe it's accurate. So when we go through the process, we look at actual bid results. You'll see the next is square foot size, construction cost per square foot, and then the construction cost escalated 1 or 2 years. Okay, and we use ENR to use the escalation factors, which are built around St. Louis. So I can tell you exactly what they are. Then what we do is we say, okay, the average cost of that's $283 a square foot. Okay, that's competitively bid. We did some test runs based on what's going on with Cape Girardeau, the police station, as well as Jackson, to make sure there wasn't a remarkable difference down here. There is some, which represented about $5, $10 a square foot, but it wasn't huge. I think a lot of that reason is the type of facility. It's a specialty facility, as well as prevailing wage law in Missouri, which begins to balance that out, so make some sense, you know. So, next thing you have to do is you got to look at total program costs. Any study that stops at construction, which is what you'll read in the newspaper, and if anybody has got an article, and I have this happen all the time, in Winsville, one of the city council members said, I just got this article saying they built this at this price point. Please give it to me. And if, with the permission of the city manager, and with the city manager present, we'll sit down, we'll walk through it. We'll do the calls, we'll study it, we'll understand why is there a difference and what did it mean. You know what I mean? Because generally they stop somewhere between 0 and 283 in what they're reporting. Okay? What they haven't gotten into is the total program cost, what they paid for land, what they paid their design consultants, what they paid for the bond counsel, which we've got a quote for $330,000 on your job. It's a lot of money for bond issuance and counsel if you choose to do that. I'll explain that in a minute. Our cost, engineering cost, moving cost, furniture cost is never reported in what you see in the paper, or often not reported by people like me that are giving you the facts. We don't believe that's accurate and shouldn't be done, so we've given you a comprehensive number, which takes you up to, on average, $382 a square foot. I will say, those are actual costs to what they've spent. So I've got Winsville's actual furniture number, Creve Coeur's actual furniture number, I've got their architectural engineering costs. They're all substantiated. Be happy to share any of that detail with anybody at any time. So now we adjust those benchmarks to your project. We created 5 options. As I mentioned before and alluded to, we said City Hall, which you can see top left-hand corner, and courts, downtown. Law enforcement, downtown. That's option number 1. The second option is both of them at Shelby Road. Third is police or City Hall downtown and police at Shelby Road. And then the next 2, not knowing what you could finance when we put this together, had the ability to finance. We wanted to give you some lower cost options, which we're just doing one building or the other. That would have been a tough decision to pick which one goes first, but we wanted to be able to have that data for you. As you look down the numbers, you'll see the total square cost, construction, site allowance, professional services, furniture, fixtures, permitting, testing. You can actually see that bond issuance number in professional services. We got that from Joe Howard. It's her estimate to issue bonds. All these things will be competitively bid. They'll be competitively priced. They'll go through a significant amount of due diligence before we land the plane on any of them. But if I'm going to establish a budget for you, I can look you in the eyes and say, if you were to make a choice to go forward that we'll be at this number or less, this is the right answer. I believe it with all my heart, and I think there's tons of data that support it. So when you go all the way down to adding some contingency on the bottom, you're looking at option 1 being just under $16 million, option 2 being just over $16 million. Option 3, where, in other words, both facilities at Shelby or both facilities downtown being roughly $16 million. Then you're looking at option 3 that suggests that they be split, and you're adding approximately $800,000 to that, which makes sense. It's the site development cost of both sites. And then smaller numbers for a city hall only, which would be just under 6, and a police station only, which would be just under 12.
Todd, could you explain the 2 items, the general contingency of 10%, and then up on option 2, the site cost analysis or allowance?
Absolutely.
The $1 million was basically just an estimate, is that?
Oh, no. So what we did is we looked at the various price points of ground in the community and indicated that if you were going to buy some portion of ground with the 3 acres or more, you know, that you should be able to buy that for $1 million.
Okay.
The 760 was the demolition cost.
Right.
So when you get to option 3, you're seeing the demolition cost and the site cost burden on that option because you're trying to develop both sites. We did not, on option 2, there was some discussion of, well, wouldn't you still want to take down those buildings downtown? Yes, but this slide is intended to indicate what's required to move forward. You know what I mean? And if you did both buildings at Shelby, you're not required to take down the buildings downtown. Now, certainly there's a lot of sentiment that would make sense, but that would be your choice, and it was not included at this time in the evaluation. Okay? The contingency, so right now, I told you Union just bid. So I'm putting up Union's bid number on that previous slide, City of Union, new City Hall, just last week. I have to remember exactly when those bids came in. I can share them with you. So when you get a bid in today's marketplace, the market is very volatile, especially the bid market. What we're seeing is bid prices, and it's ridiculous, are ranging. You can have a 10% swing on bid day. Okay? And we're seeing on everything we bid right now. You can have a remarkable architect that has a super tight set of drawings. That used to be the indicator. If you had 10% swing, it meant somebody did a bad job during the design phase because there was things left out of the drawings or it wasn't as clean of a drawing set. That's not the case right now. What's happening is the market is very volatile, and you're having a lot of people swinging a lot of different deals and working a lot of different angles. So on bid day, a lot of our bids are showing up right now with a 10% swing. Well, if you got a $10 million job, you could have one guy at $9 million, one guy at $10 million. Every construction number on here is based upon the guy that was a 9. Okay? So what we do is we believe that you should have a contingency to cover bid day risk, right? In case you don't get the low bidder, something changes. There's also a lot of volatility with tariffs and market conditions. That helps cover that. Also, what it covers is any type of changes that might occur during the design phase. You realize that maybe the chief wants that there's something that makes sense for the police station or the city hall that we didn't include in the numbers or was different, and we have the ability to accommodate that. And probably the last thing and most important, though I don't think you're going to have exposure here, would be subsurface conditions, things you can't see or unforeseen conditions. Okay? So what we're finding, for all those reasons, most bonding agents, most people that want to issue debt want to know that you've got a minimum of 10% contingency on there to make the debt more soluble, to make it, to cover your risk and theirs. So we automatically put 10%. I can tell you, oh shoot, I would bet, well, we don't want to spend it. The job is not to spend any of it. All right, it really isn't. The job is to give it back to you. You got plenty of things you can spend $1 million on if we don't. So the intent is not to spend the contingency, it's there for risk management. Did it answer your question, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions on this before I move on? Okay, next thing we knew you would ask would be, okay, well, if we say, okay, Mark and Todd, move forward with an option, one of these 5, or your choice can be not to do any. But if we authorize you to move forward, before I can say yes to anything, I need to know, could we actually potentially fund it? Okay? I'm not the expert with that, neither is Mark. So what we did do is ask Joy Howard and her firm to come in and do a quick analysis. She is very specific on her request to do more due diligence. She'd like to come in, and we think it's very prudent that one of the next steps would have her to come in and sit down with you and walk through all the options and all of her suggestions. We've summarized some of it in the document that we will show you in a moment. Her basis, though, what it all comes down to is what could potentially be a funding source. So when she asked that question, we went to Mark and his team, and they created this spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is capital fund balance you're very familiar with. And as you know, you just finished the debt service on this facility, which allows at the end of 2019 for there to be a remaining balance in your capital fund balance of $1 million. A little over $1 million, $1,038,000 is what's projected. And then you can see as we go forward, it doesn't decline, it actually increases. It increases as a 2% growth rate. It also increases because by 2023, you actually lose some other debt that you currently have. What's not reflected on this could be things you could add to it. Purchase of a new car, purchase of other capital funds, and Mark's been studying that as well to understand if there's, how we would have to do some tightening if we used all the money to make sure we're not spending on other things, well, for the next couple of years anyway, until we go forward. So, right off the bat, 2019, if you authorize us tonight, any funds that are spent doing more due diligence on an option would come out of the capital fund balance, which is $1,038,000. If you were to proceed with us, it would be our anticipation that any options further due diligence would be completed by first quarter of next year to the point where you could actually consider the incurring of actual debt. Okay, so by first quarter of next year, we'll have flushed out, if you're going to buy ground, that property acquisition, we'll have flushed out some more designs so we know exactly how it's going to fit. We can shore up costs. There's a lot of things that are going to be going on. We'll have Joy Howard go through and confirm all the finances so that by first quarter of next year, you'd be able to potentially issue debt, which would require your authorization for us to do so. That debt would be based upon, right now, a projection of $1.2 million a year. That's what we asked Joy to look at. We said, Joy, assuming we only used $1.2 million worth of a year of debt service, so in 2023, where you can see on the right-hand column, there's a purple number that says $1,951,000. We weren't suggesting she use that in the equation. Again, we said $1.2 million every year for the next 20 years. Okay? So at that time, you would still be building capital fund reserve. Does that make sense? Any question on that? So again, immediate, the next year, we'd spend out of the $1,038,000. After that, you would have a debt service sometime second or third quarter of next year, depending on option, and it would be paid for out of the $1,200,000 a year that we believe would be a prudent amount to spend towards that of your capital fund balance. Okay, what does that look like? Well, again, we asked Joy. Total loan amount you can get with the $1,200,000. Oh, this is hard to see. I apologize. 16.3 is the magic number. This includes her 330. You can see it on this sheet somewhere where she talks about the debt service of 330. And this is just snapshots from her report. We do have the full report. And then you can see over here, I can't get my fingers to work right. You can see over here in the far right-hand column, $1,122,000. So we said you have $1,200,000 to spend. She actually was conservative and said, I'll just, if you use $1,122,000, I think you can get $16.3 million. Okay? Again, next steps would include further due diligence here and coming to you with an actual plan that Joy would have to create so that we can make sure this all works right. Let me see if I can steal him up. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Excuse me 1 second. So again, the $1,038,000, which was one of the purple numbers at the end of 2019, plus 1633, would generate a $17 million project. When you compare that to the options, the top three options where you did both buildings, this slide simply states that you potentially have the financial wherewithal to do both projects now. I could put 4 and 5 on there too, but obviously that's self-explanatory. I'm open. Okay. So next steps. We're at a standstill right now because we need your direction. What we're looking for tonight, as stated before, is tonight's objective is your direction, your authorization for city staff, city manager, and myself to continue with the due diligence based upon a selection of an option. The options, again, being defined, and I'll go back, both buildings downtown, both buildings at Shelby Road, or City Hall downtown, police station at Shelby Road, or 4 and 5, should that be your pleasure, obviously. You put those back up. If you authorize to proceed, again, our cost would be coming against that $1,038,000 that exists, but we would be looking at doing site due diligence, land acquisition. We got to either consider how we're going, what consultants to move forward with, obviously underneath your direction to us, project scheduling, project financing coordination. We need FM to advance their review of your financials, and we obviously need staff to begin negotiations. If you pick option 2 or 3, we would need them to begin on those negotiations. The intent would be to come back on a monthly basis and give you an update. And when key deliverables require your action, that we ask you for those actions. I can tell you one in particular would be, obviously, the issuance of debt next year. That would be a point where you could say, we're done. And every contract we do, regardless, even ours, which I put the numbers up there only because you've already authorized our contract, but any contract that exists, you can terminate at Joy Howard's, and you can terminate at any time and you pay what you spend. We'll make sure that's the case. So if there is a decision down the road, or we learn new information, or they ask for $5 million on the land, that changes the equation, well then you certainly will be given that data, and you could either choose to discontinue or change direction at your pleasure. Okay? So we're really looking at those 3 options, and I'd like to turn it over for questions, and then encourage the council to direct us regarding an option and an authorization to proceed or not to proceed at all.
So if the council would give you direction to proceed, that's not saying that we're committed to these $16 million amounts or $15 million amounts. It's just to proceed with getting an architect on board and negotiation on land if they would choose that site or not. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. You won't be locked into that $16 million, quite frankly, until you authorize debt.
So this will be certain steps along the way.
It is. With this direction, we are able to do the due diligence required on one of those options so that we can shore this deal up and make sure that all the assumptions made to build these options are correct and accurate. And that's part of it. We just cannot do it, or it's not in the best, we could, but it wouldn't be in our recommendation, the best interest of the council to do it on all three sites. We've done all the options. We're at a point where we need to pick one or don't. I mean, that is an option not to do anything, but pick an option so that we can then take it to the next step. But it requires a decision on ground and location, which has been a difficult analysis.
Well, before I make any decisions, I would like to hear from the general public. I mean, I would like to see what they think about this as far as the locations, downtown, Shelby Road, or wherever. I would like to hear their opinions.
May I go sit down until?
Sure,
Back up.
sure.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I would like to clarify a couple of things, though. I know we've talked about our financial problems the last few years. This is capital expenditure money. This money cannot be used for salaries or benefits or operating expenses. It's strictly for equipment and items like this. So I hope that kind of answers that question. On the Shelby Road property, it's owned by a local bank, the same bank that owned the property on Sunset where Utilities purchased a building. What the bank did on that property was offered it to them. I think it was 30% of the appraised value. I have talked to the bank about it, and they said they would, if we were interested in that property, if you all would go that way, that they would work out an arrangement similar to that and maybe even a better, maybe down to 25% of the appraised value. But I'll leave it at that. And
Do we have any input from the audience? Please state your name and address.
I'm Thomas Wright. Have Tom's Barbershop downtown. Been down here for about 43 years. And downtown's been good to me. Okay, but here a while back, if you remember, we're going to move out here on one of these little roads, and there was a big uproar, and a lot of people got involved in it. And they finally got the city council members at that time to decide that they was going to take and put the city hall and the police station back downtown where it needs to be. And if you take and go any other place, granted this guy back here, he's a good salesman. Sounds like it'd be cheap buying that land out there on Shelby Road, but it's a salesman. You're not doing what the people of the city ask you to do. They ask you to put the city hall and the police station back downtown. Try and build the downtown back up. We've done enough building every place else. We need to do something for downtown, not the outskirts of the city. So, like I say, if you try and change it, go someplace else, there may be another bunch of people coming down here at the meetings saying, hey, you decided once to put it downtown. Keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mine has been 16 years since I've worked for the city, so it takes me a little longer to get to the microphone. First, I want to compliment all of you for sorry. That's most people thought I would like to preach anyway. I want to thank all of you for doing your job as a city council. I remember this a long way back. I remember when we were down here where St. Vincent's is on South Broadway, and then we moved up to the Lucily Hospital. and stayed there, 25 years or so? And a lot of things happened that caused the need to move from that location. Now you're in one that you're not happy with, and I understand that. My strong feeling has been, and Mark probably gave you a copy of the letter that I wrote him, and those are just honest feelings. I know you're going to study this hard and make a good, qualified, highly budgeted need decision and something that fits the will of the people of this community that you serve. I agree with Barbershop Mr. Wright back there with some of his comments. I just don't say it quite as strong as he does. I also believe that it's very, very important. I regret the time that I was with the city that I did not spend more time trying to get something done about downtown. We had a lot of other things going, and you remember what they were. And we've been successful at most of them. The city is growing. It will continue to grow financially and in retail needs of the city. There's no question about that. The revenue will continue to grow. And I'm very proud that that's going to happen. You helped a lot in making sure that that's going to happen. But I also believe strongly that downtown needs public institutions to remain downtown. And this is a very important one. The police department is a little bit different concern, and I know that. My preference would be to see them downtown with you, side by side or close. But they also might need a substation out in the suburbs. The suburbs are going to continue to grow, and we know that. But every city of our size needs a downtown. I remember, you don't need to hear all this, but when I was the summer before I was going to be a senior in high school here at Poplar Bluff, 1949, I remember the bicentennial celebration. And this town was alive, and and it has been many times since then. But in the past several years, we've just simply seen it go downhill, especially Main Street and Broadway. The only way to stop that, obviously, is not for institutions like City Council and the Police Department and others that are important. Thank God the courthouse is here and the Sheriff's Department's here. But we just simply need, in order for us to make sure that the right kind of ingredients are downtown, I feel like it's important that City Council stay downtown. It's a tough decision for you, and I know it, and I'm not here to get you arguing back and forth about it, because I know you'll make the right decision in the long run. And it's whatever decision it's going to be, I'm going to continue to live here and pay taxes. And so you don't have to worry about that. And listen, and again, I want to thank you for all you do. I pay attention. I don't show up very much, but I know what's going on, and I know how difficult it is to satisfy everyone. So good luck to you. The gentleman made a long, very, very informative report. He's a good salesman. I agree with that. I also am very familiar with Baldwin and Union, and I know what's going on there too. I have a family that goes to church in Union every Sunday, and they keep up with that too. Thank you very much for giving me the time.
Can we get your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Tom Lawson, 205 Kaylee Circle, Poplar Bluff.
Thank you, sir. Yes, come forward, please.
Approaching the bench. Tracy Eddington, 2629 North Main, Poplar, Bluff, Missouri. Thank you all for serving. Man, it's tough up here, isn't it, sometimes? Keeping everybody happy. I wanted to reiterate everything Dr. Lawson said. Also, Mr. Sweeney's presentation was very nice. I've been in on hundreds of those, and that was very good. And he was fairly fair, pretty fair. He was fair. But, man, the most important thing I learned when I was sitting with you guys was a budget. I don't think any of those numbers can be supported with Poplar Bluff's budget. Okay? You make a budget for a year. You're also thinking about many, many, many years down the road. If you build 2 buildings, you're going to have 2 maintenance line items on your budget instead of 1. You're going to have, I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit. I'm just a little perplexed that it's going to take only $760,000 to tear down City Hall. When I've seen our street department tear down a house over here on Main Street in one day and grass was growing the next week in the front yard. We can do that. But we don't need 27,000 square feet for a police department. And we have one of the finest in the state. Everybody loves our chief, our department, but those guys don't make enough money, and we all know that. But just think about the money here, and think about your budget, and don't strap future councils with a big old $1 million payment that they don't need. The city's not laying no golden eggs down here. We're strapping and scrapping, and this is as Mark said, it's going to be a payment every year. But that's just my concerns and my comments from the guy that lives on North Main Street. And again, thank you all. Thank you. It is, I know you get a lot of phone calls. I still get some. I used to get calls from, school board stuff, and I know you probably get that too, But anyway, anybody got any questions for me? Comments? No? Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Edison.
My name is Ron Hill, and I live at Route 1, Box 574, Harville, Missouri. And Mr. Mayor, councilmen, women, I appreciate you guys having this open discussion tonight on this. We was here some time back, I guess, like Tom was talking about the downtown. And I'm here to try to encourage you guys to support the downtown. My children has bought a building downtown. It's a coffee shop, Foxtrot. Haffey's has done a great job downtown, building that site down there. Actually, across the street, you know what they've done down there too. They've really made it look nice, outside facility. There's a project going down on Park Avenue for the young kids. It's a baseball facility. You guys know where that's at. I think they just purchased more property down there. They're going to have a batting cage and stuff, and working with the youth. And we're all I was honored to spend a few years on the council with Mr. Tom Lawson back there. Is a great guy, and I really enjoyed that, and there was a lot of progress made for our city. But like you said, we've kind of neglected downtown, and the young people have a vision for downtown. They want to see these buildings revitalized. They're spending their money down there to revitalize these buildings. They're working hard. and they need some help, and they need the city to stand by them and to help them. You know, my time is kind of come and gone as far as helping the community, and I enjoyed it while I was on there, but it's your time now, and we got to look to the future generations. We have a lot of retail, and that's what we worked on when I was on there, a lot of retail outside of, it was outside of town at that time. It's in town now, but it's growing, the retail. But with the rebuilding of the downtown, I think there's a grant that's available for a lot of money to come in and redo the downtown, to help the people do it. If you guys will back them, if you guys will support them and be behind them. And this provides retail space for young people that can't afford the retail space out on the highway. They just can't. It's too high, and the grant will be able to allow them to have some affordable retail space to start up their own businesses, you know, like a lot of people did years ago. It'll be cheaper for them to be able to do that downtown, and it'll help revive the buildings. We've seen it go down tremendously. I mean, the banks have left. You know, U.S. Bank's gone now. There's another empty building. And with building the downtown project, you know, it's the cheapest one on the board, it looks to me like. And besides that, if you don't do it, if you do another option, you're going to have to tear down those buildings downtown anyway, eventually. They're going to fall down. We have dilapidated buildings all over town, houses and stuff that need tore down or fixed. And this is just going to add to the problem that we have already. We have people sleeping in those buildings and houses and stuff, and hopefully nobody's broke into the downtown places yet, but they're going to have to come down if you build somewhere else. So it stands to reason, you know, it's basically the taxpayers' money, and the best option for me that I'm looking at is the downtown, because like I said, you're going to have to tear those buildings down anyway eventually, so that would be a good option for you guys. But I just want to encourage you to look to the future for the young people. You know, there's been several young people that's bought those buildings downtown and spent a lot of money on them, that's working, and they're trying to rebuild that downtown. You have the different festivals that's going on. It works great. Jericho's doing a great job, and those festivals do a great work, and people love to come downtown. The younger generations love old downtowns. That's why Cape's thriving. They're downtown. So we can do the same thing. We got a beautiful downtown, beautiful library down there close to where this facility is. You got the courthouse. You got law enforcement. You know, if you build your main building out on Shelby Road, you got the courthouse right down there where the sheriff's department is. They can transport their prisoners over to the courthouse. It's convenient for them. If you build the new police department down there, it's going to be easier for them to transport their prisoners. He was talking about building cells. They're going to be holding them for something. So if they have court, they're going to have to take them to the courthouse. It's going to be transportation costs and manpower costs. And you guys know, I'm sure that, I don't know, I haven't kept up with it, but your policemen are overworked. You just can't have enough of them out there. And if you build it way out there on Shelby Road, you got response time to the east side, south side, the middle of town is going to be terrible. Sure, it's going to be a good response time to the schools, the new schools that's built out there, but you still got the junior high downtown, you know, and you got all the different other little schools downtown and daycares and stuff like that. And so, you know, we need to think about representing the whole town where it's convenient and safe for everybody to get down in case of emergencies and stuff like that. So just want to encourage you guys to look at everything, and I appreciate all the work you guys do for $1 a year. And and thank you very much for letting me stand up here and talk to you.
Thank you.
I'm Phyllis Baker, 3500 Marble Hill Road, and I'm a downtown property owner. Many of you probably know that. Why did I think that over a year ago we put this to bed and now it's coming back? It's a disappointment to feel that a decision is made, but not really. And in an effort for transparency, if you're determined to consider all of these options, maybe you would consider an open forum with the community. Many, many, many of us thought this issue was put to bed. I did know you were hiring a consulting firm, and I thought it was for the use of the building, how it would be structured. I had no idea you were choosing a different site. I have a question for the consultant, may I ask?
Sure.
You have done several cities. You have consulted for several cities. Do most of them move out of their downtown?
Mr. Sweeney?
If I may address, thank you for the question. Every city and every unique proposition put forth is unique to the city. So there's some that stay downtown, some that move out, and they're all doing the exact same thing you're doing here, which is making a decision which is best for the long-term viability of the community.
So there's not a trend?
There is not, that I'm aware of.
So there's not a trend. Remaining downtown would not be a mistake, for instance, because the trend is to move out of downtown for a certain reason. I respect that you hired a consultant as an involved community member. I also went to meetings, and we also had consultants about downtown. And what I heard them say was, quote, "It's the kiss of death for City Hall to move out of downtown." And I think that some of you were in the room when it was said. It was not long after that the decision was made to keep it downtown. Maybe. I don't know that that decision was made. There are grants, there are opportunities. Your actions may stymie all of that. I'd encourage you for, again, transparency. And as a gentleman said earlier tonight, be intentional. Think about the rest of the community. It's not just about the folks sitting up here. It's about everybody. And folks have good things to say. I hope that you will consider an opportunity to listen. We all want to hop on board. We all want to feel good about it. And if the right thing to do is to go somewhere else, let's go. But if the right thing to do is to stay downtown, let's stay. One thing that has never been mentioned is Black River, and it's a real asset to our downtown. Not every downtown has a river running through it. And can you imagine utilizing that in an architect's drawing? Maybe there's an outdoor porch or balcony or boat dock, I don't know. Keep that in mind. It doesn't end with so many square feet, it's so much a square foot. Sometimes we have an opportunity to be very unique and to really make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else, we're going to move on a little bit here.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
I know I was the mayor at the time when Mr. Massingham came out and said we were going to put the city hall and police station in the downtown site. And I called for a vote on that, and it was unanimous among all the 7 council members that were working at that time. And I was also, on the council when we were looking at the Northwest Medical, and received lots and lots of calls, and I'm told Mr. Massingham did at the same time, and most of them were opposed to the city hall and police station going north. That was their main concern. Some was the building, but most of them were moving out of the downtown. Also asked Mr. Massingham, and we had something a few months ago from the, I believe it's City Clerks Association, about the location and how the city halls stay in that downtown area. It makes the downtown thrive and makes people happy. I asked Mr. Massingham how many calls he got about when he said it'd be go downtown. If there's any comments or negative, and he said that told me absolutely none. So I've listened to the citizens of what they want, all of it downtown. As far as the police department, you know, responding to the, you know, we've got school resource officers now. They do a great job. Our officers are out on the road, and the response time things you hear up Shelby Road, getting this way or that way. The officers are still assigned to zones, and when they get the call, they get the response time from the time the dispatcher gives them the call until they go 1023, which means they arrive there. So that wouldn't matter where the police station is. Okay? And like Mr. Hill said, you know, the expense that would be saved transporting prisoners to court, to municipal court, or to the jail from police station would be less on us. We've had to draw from our reserves several years now to make the budget. We've already got the land that will house the facilities downtown, and if we buy anything else, that money could go towards that, that price of it. We had Dilly and Traxel, I think there was 2 or 3 different times, requests for qualifications, and they were chosen unanimously by the council to do this thing. And the last one I remember was like $170 a square foot for this facility, which is about half as much as we're seeing here. And we were wondering how we were going to pay that $170 a square foot, much less going up to 300 and something. And we knew that these 2 years would be rough on our budget with that last payments on this building. And so we put off buying some things. We figured out ways to get some new fire trucks to keep the fire department good. We've got a great fire department, a great police department. We try to keep them in their equipment. And now we're looking at spending more than what the payment is now on this for several years. I think that'd be an injustice to the rest of the community to do something like that. I think it should stay downtown, both facilities. That'd give us a 6-square block government complex in our downtown. Would see our downtown start to grow, continue to grow. The north end's going to take care of itself with retail space. If we bought that property out there, we're not going to get sales tax, property tax on it. Any retail store, we're going to miss any sales tax coming in, and we know how important that is to us. I mean, we're looking at the use tax coming up on ballot. I think we did that at the last meeting to come up. If the citizens want it to stay downtown and we vote against that, they're not going to pass that use tax because they won't think we're listening to them and doing what they want to do, in my opinion. Thank you.
Yes, please.
I was just going to stay seated and thought I should come up and say a few words. Jerica Fox, 501 Vine Street. So I appreciate you letting me look over your notes so I could see them a little better because like everyone here tonight, it's the first time that I've got to see numbers. I was previously a council member, so I remember some of these figures several years ago. But one time being in your seat, I so appreciate the extensive look at this. I know we've looked at it a lot of times, but sometimes they were figurative numbers that maybe, you know, it was between $500,000 and $1.5 million. And so it's hard to sometimes try to vote on something when the numbers are so extreme. And so to finally have someone come in and give us some pretty hard figures that we know this is probably the maximum that we're going to spend, and maybe less, which is always nice to hear. So of course, being the director of downtown Poplar Bluff, I would love to see option 1. However, I've had extensive talks with Chief Whiteley, and I understand his concerns and the officers' concerns. And I feel like if you feel that Shelby Road is an option that you're deciding, I would hope that you all would consider option 3. I think that was maybe the proposed option from the consultants to begin with. However, budget-wise, as many has said, option one is the best, but I think we do need to figure in expansion of our community as retail grows, as the community grows, as our city grows, so do our city facilities. And so I would love to see option one be chosen. However, as it was previously stated, I'll still live in the city limits, and I'm still going to pay my taxes, and I'm still going to be the director of downtown Poplar Bluff as long as you have me. But option one, coming from many of the businesses downtown, coming from Missouri Main Street and National Main Street statistics, that downtowns survive more, have better numbers, and receive more grant funds when their city shows the most support, not only monetary, but in situations like this where you are here as a foundation for our downtown. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. I guess I need a motion from the council, rather to move on with this or decide what we want to do.
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion. Before I make the motion, I'd maybe just make a couple of comments if I could.
Sure.
One, I don't doubt that all of us in this room tonight want what's best for the city. There's not a one of us here that don't want that good. And I think the second thing, we all agree that we need to do something. We've put it off and put it off and put it off and haven't accomplished anything. In the meantime, we spent a lot of money renting buildings and things like that. We all, I think, agree we need to do something. And as with public decisions, always there's differences in what that best decision is. And I want you to know I respect and hear all of that. And I think anybody that's making any points that have made them with me or here tonight, they are valid points to consider. But I do think we need to move forward. And so I'm going to make a motion that we authorize the city manager and Navigate to move forward in gathering further information that may be needed and in negotiations regarding option two. I'd like to make a statement. You have the motion. Now, this is not a decision. It still will have to come back before this council to approve. Well, you can hear it before, but it's a fact. We have to approve it. And so that is the motion on the floor.
I second the motion.
Councilman, for clarification, the mayor wanted you to clarify exactly. Please restate the motion.
Restate the motion, yes. A motion to authorize the city manager and Navigate to move forward in gathering further information that may be needed and to enter into negotiations regarding option two. I have it written if you need it, Mr. Clerk.
I can ask a question, please? I thought we had entered into a contract with Dillian Traxel at a rate of like 7% for, that may have been a specific location. Okay, and that's a local firm. We all know what we did recently to get a bid to a local firm. And then this will add an additional 5% to that? For Navigate's information, is there 5% on top of that 7?
Yes.
And their cost is about double per square foot from what Dillian Traxel presented to us a couple of years ago, or a year ago, or two, I don't know, some of them run together.
Yeah, I guess it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, I'm not sure.
Mark, I also have a question. Do you have the figure what we're paying in rent right now for the police station, for dispatch, for City Hall? What are we paying currently?
For City Hall, police station, and the rent we pay to the college for dispatch, it's right at $100,000 a year for all three of them.
Okay.
And that comes out of general fund, doesn't come out of capital fund like this would.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? We had a motion and a second.
I call for roll call.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote.
Okay. Councilwoman Parson?
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris?
No.
Councilwoman Horton?
No.
Councilman Cornman?
Yes.
Councilman Black?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
No.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Okay, the motion's carried. Okay. Yes, yes. We can go ahead while he's doing that. Wait a minute.
And
Thank you. Any further questions for me?
Anyone have any further questions?
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
That'd be bad.
Right.
It's rough, may have to interpret it.
Please.
I shall be brief. Just live.
Yes.
John Stannard, 1310 Barron Road. I have two questions. Without casting any aspersions on anyone, certainly Mr. Sweeney's firm, but can somebody on the council tell me what his fee is going to be if we spend $16 million and he stays with this project? Just a general number. I'd like to hear it.
No, happy to. My name's Navigate Building Solutions, Todd Sweeney again. Yeah, the contract that we were competitively priced on about 4 months ago was for a ongoing project management services that cannot exceed 5% of the cost of the project cost.
And that would be how much? $16 million.
We can all do the math. Well, that's
$300,000, is that correct? At 5%?
not to exceed 5%. I'd have to do the math. I don't want to do it on. Right now,
Does anybody know? Does anybody have any idea?
well, we had
800,000.
I'm sorry?
Would it be 800,000 on 16 million?
Yeah, because we were substantially less than that in what we had proposed as far as staffing. We were less than the 5%.
And what would it be?
Is this prudent that I answer this?
It's a public meeting, I
I
would
think you
think.
had it on your chart, or on
We did have
the
it.
last
Looks like
slide.
Joe
It was
had it open.
600 and something thousand.
668,000, I think it's a.
685,017 million is 4%.
Okay, fine. I'm sure you would earn that if you were retained. Second question, and I'll sit down. Typically, what is your architect's fee percentage-wise likely to be? on a $16 million project?
The average fee for architectural services, and we've negotiated over 20 contracts for architectural services on similar projects, is 8.5%. You were quoted 7%, but that did not include all the services that would be required for this project.
Okay, there's 8.5% of $16 million. That's even more than the other number I heard. And typically, an architect does what Mr. Swinney's firm is doing.
Sir, that is an inaccurate statement. It is completely inaccurate. Quite frankly, if they did the same thing, Dilly Traxel would not have provided you with information that's inaccurate and not appropriate for their discussion. There was a young lady earlier that described all the various numbers, the $500,000, the $1.5 million. What you needed was a professional project management firm that could do what they could not.
Yeah, I didn't come up here to debate, but, you know, I was born at night, but not last night, okay?
Thank you, sir. Okay, we're going to move on. First, I would like to thank everyone for being here and participating tonight. Thank you again. Item B, the City Council will review change order number 1 relative to the 11th Street roadway project. Mr. Billy Cobb, please.
No, don't do that. I'm gonna give him something to talk about.
Billy Cobb, Smith Company, 901 Vine Street. Apologize for the shorts, came from a baseball game, but got a change order before you it's for the 11th Street Manufacturing Road project. Basically, there's 100% grant funds left, and so there's a 6-inch curb that would help with the future manufacturing expansion. It's along 11th Street. It's actually 11th Street is not curbed, and so this would be curbing some of 11th Street. And then the other item is some when we bid the project, there was when we posed it with the contractor providing his own fill material, and then we figured out that we could get some from PBI 11th Street, the Empire's property, and so this is borrow material from them to fill in for the roadway. So that's what's on this proposal, and like I said, it's 100% grant funds through the economic development. So. Any questions, I guess?
Bill, I got a question. Is this an overrun on quantities or just a change order?
It's just a change order, completely new items.
All right.
Make a motion.
Pass it voting session September 16.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Item C, the City Council will review a petition for annexation of property located at 3390 Canal Boulevard and owned by Jerry Ann Rowland and Stacy Blankenship.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As he stated, Busy Bee Kids Therapy LLC is requesting to be a property be annexed. The address is 3390 Canal Boulevard. It's approximately a half an acre on the south side of Canal Boulevard. So we're presenting this to you tonight. Ms. Rowland is here if you have any questions of her. And then this will go to planning and zoning and come back with a recommendation for how it's going to be zoned if it does get approved. So tonight, did we decide what kind of action we're asking for? I'm asking for, or we just?
We have to hold a public hearing. We'll do a workshop calling for a public hearing. So this will actually be a workshop item at our next council meeting.
I'm learning something new every day. It's been a year and a half.
Now, these are steps that we have to go through,
Right.
through state statutes for annexation. Rather lengthy process.
So we're gonna. This is my first annexation request, and it's
Mine too.
So we're looking forward to learning the process altogether. So This is the first step.
Yes.
So we've got to go back to two P and Z meetings?
Can we make it easy so we can add it to the city?
Like Mr. Massingham said, there's actually state ordinances, state laws that
Right.
dictate how it's done. So unfortunately, we can't change the process.
And tonight is-
Although we would like to.
Tonight is the presentation of
Yes.
the annexation.
And so then
For public
at the next council meeting, we'll have a public hearing. And then on the 23rd, it goes before planning and zoning, so.
We'll need a motion to move that to that September 16th meeting then.
Second.
He just made a motion to put it on the workshop.
Yes,
Put it off for workshop.
for workshop on the September 16th meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
And we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Item D, the city council will review a request from planning and inspections department to amend section 405.095A1I of the Code of Ordinances relative to sign regulations. Mr. Winters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This particular section of the ordinance addresses the cost for sign permits. We actually have sign companies in town that have been asking us to increase these prices. Our sign currently, a sign permit fee is 10 cents per square foot, or a minimum of $10. Went back through our permits for the last year and a half, and I think we've had one time where a permit has exceeded the $10 amount. We looked at other cities and are proposing that we raise our sign permit fee to a flat $40 for any sign permit fee. Like I said, looking at other cities in our area, our size, they range typically 35 to 45, so we're dropping right in the middle and asking for to raise that permit fee to $40.
Any further discussion? Do we have a motion?
Motion to be moved to the next meeting, September 16th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Item E, the city council will review a request from the Planning and Inspections Department to amend section 405.095A3K1 of the Code of Ordinances relative to fees for billboards. Mr. Winters.
Thank you. This is just kind of, we charge the same rate for a building permit fee for billboards. And when we changed our building permit fees back last year, I didn't catch it, and this didn't get changed. This is to update that section to reflect the new building permit fee. And instead of worrying about having to change this section the next time that we change a building permit fee, I've just asked that it be amended to reference the fee that's in that section of the ordinance, section 500.030, as opposed to putting a specific dollar amount that would have to be changed again if we ever change our building permit fees. So. And that's my last one.
Make a motion that we pass this voting session September 16th.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Item F, the city council will review proposed amendments to business licenses and regulations, chapter 605.040, license tax levied, 605.175, fees for operating in open flea markets, 605.20, computation of tax generally, 605.270, computation of tax, wholesale license, peddlers and solicitors, 16.040, fees and taxi cab limousines, 645.120, license fee A, and 645.20, fee pertaining to business license fees. Mr.
Mayor,
Maxey.
could you read that again?
Need the attorney to read that.
I make a motion, we move it to the September 16th voting session.
I second it.
Any further discussion? Did you need to say anything on that?
No, I was just going to say this kind of started with, when you come in to apply for a business license, we charge $7.50, and sometimes the collector sees that same person 3 or 4 times, and we kind of called around some other cities to see what they charge. Some charge 25, some charge 50, and when we decided that, then we just decided to go through and look through the entire sections on business license, and we've changed a lot of them. Some we haven't changed a bit. Some of those come from other cities, and some just kind of came from staff input. So that's where this all came from. They haven't been changed in years and years. So
I think this is excellent that this is being done to kind of ramp things up, Maria, refigure these things, so.
and it doesn't create a whole lot of money for us, but it, like I said, some of the staff time it takes them to work on some of this, on wages and benefits have definitely changed in the last 30 years.
So it's more or less bringing it into line with
I think so, yeah.
trends.
Okay, we had a motion and a second, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Action required items. AA, Bill Number 8174. The City Council will take action on an ordinance approving a request to erect a 130-foot high telecommunications monopole at 830 South 8th Street, formerly addressed as 635 South 6th Street.
Move for first reading of bill number 8174.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Counselor.
An ordinance authorizing Network Real Estate, an agent of AT&T, to erect a 130-foot monopole telecommunications tower located at 830 South 8th Street in Poplar, Bluff, Missouri.
Motion for second reading of Bill 8174.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Counselor.
An ordinance authorizing Network Real Estate, an agent of AT&T, to erect a 130-foot monopole telecommunications tower located at 830 South 8th Street in Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Have a motion for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mrs. Young?
Councilwoman Parson?
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris?
Yes.
Councilwoman Horton?
Yes.
Councilman Cornman?
Yes.
Councilman Black?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes.
Carries.
Bill number 8174 is adopted. Item BB, the City Council of the City of Poplar Bluff will meet in a closed meeting in which they will discuss such matters which are exempted under the Open Meetings Law Section 610.21.1, 610.21.2, .3, .9, .11, .12, .13, and .14, the revised statute of Missouri, following the city manager's report.
Make a motion to move into closed session following the city manager's report.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman DeGaris?
Yes.
Councilwoman Horton?
Yes.
Councilman Cornman?
Yes.
Councilman Black?
Yes.
Councilwoman Parson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes.
Yes, have it.
Just a couple of items. In this year's budget, we had budgeted about $150,000. That was kind of an estimate we had to repair the road bed on Broadway over the old Frisco Tunnel. We advertised for bids. The lowest bid came in around $235,000, which was way over what we budgeted. So we actually just rejected all those bids. In the meantime, I talked to Street Superintendent Jerry Lawson, who's here tonight. Jerry took a look at it, and he's gave me some figures on, instead of building basically a bridge over the tunnel, is to fill the tunnel with red clay and then riprap on the sides for drainage. Cost to do all that, the riprap's estimated at $2,000. The fill dirt and trucking is around $30,000. Concrete to do the street above is $12,000. $1,000 for fencing during the project, or no, for fencing along the roadway, and $3,500 for the rental of a dozer, which street department will be doing all this, which comes right at $49,000, which is considerably less than $235,000 for a new bridge over that. We haven't made a definite decision on what we wanted to do. I just wanted to let you all know what we're looking at, and if you all have any input, I would appreciate it. And if any public has any input on filling that tunnel, and then in another year or two, we'd probably do the Main Street side the same way.
Now, would there be some type of drainage there? Does water drain through there?
Jerry's been through that several times, so.
No, sir. Water actually stands in it. Okay. It's kind of a mosquito hatchery. When we would come in, we would completely fill the tunnel from both ends. It'd be about 300-foot long section that we'll fill. We'll get it as close as we can on the Main Street side, and then when the budget allows, we'll take that out and fill it the rest of the way, get compaction and everything. But the portion behind Scott Law Office and the other building on the opposite side of the tunnel, we'll be sure and crown it there so we get drainage both ways. So we won't have any water standing that could cause an issue with anyone's basement or anything.
Okay, that was a concern. I haven't been familiar with that actual tunnel, but I was concerned about it.
It's pretty rough under there.
No, it's kind of a dangerous area for, crime and other things. I mean, it's a long tunnel. It's dark at night, and it's a mess through there. But you're right, it breeds mosquitoes for sure. So.
Yeah. I think you can solve some issues besides the safety matters too, that you kind of referred to.
I think so,
A lot
too.
of things happen there that shouldn't happen.
Yes, I mean, it is. And I think we can do it for somewhere shy of 50,000.
Sounds good.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Did you have anything else?
The only other thing I wanted to mention was, in the last couple of months, we've had a lot of announcements of jobs. Empire Comfort Systems, up to 200 jobs, maybe even more, which is the new factory on South 11th Street, and I know they've already started production. New Wave Communication, they moved their call center over here and creating 50 or 60 new jobs. Of course, Briggs & Stratton, that was announced a couple of weeks ago, closing one plant and relocating that over here, upwards of 350 jobs. And then last week at the right after the ribbon cutting for the railroad overpass, Mid-Continent Nail said they'd be hiring 70 new people by the end of this year. So That comes up to 680 manufacturing jobs within the last 3 months, and that's kind of unheard of around here. I'd just say hats off to Poplar Bluff Industries and City Council and Steve Halter at the Chamber. Steve worked really, really hard on all of these, and appreciate the hard work. And that's all I have.
Any other comments? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All in favor? Aye.
Aye, aye.
We'll take a little recess, like a 2-minute recess. 2-minute recess.